The tale begins in Japan in 1970 when Tokyo City was destroyed. There was fire everywhere due to the attack of the monsters, and a few magicians were fighting them. One of the men ordered the other to fire at the monsters, but it didn't cause many injuries to the demon. They were stunned and about to cry at the thought that they were going to die, as the monster was about to attack them. But suddenly a martial artist appeared and blocked the attack of the beast. He told the other men that they had done well. While they were crying, he called for the general to retreat and told them to leave everything to him. One of the soldiers instructed the other to exit, and then his companion asked him if they could run away and hide. He thought his companion was a dumbass and asked if he didn't know who that man was. He told him that he was the founder of magic and the strongest mage. He was stunned to see that he was the famous Ichikami Minato. The soldier cleared his tears and said, "That's right, the person standing before us is him. He was standing alone in front of so many monsters. The monster attacked him, but he struck first and thought the beast was very slow. He hit it so hard that the beast divided into many parts, and then he told the other monsters to come at him. One day, many monsters suddenly appeared worldwide, and this event became known as the Calamity. Human weapons were ineffective against demons. However, humanity began opening its eyes to the possibilities of magic. Magic became the only thing capable of defeating monsters, and the battle between monsters and humanity continued for over a decade. Back to the present. The first and most powerful mage, Ichikami Atsumu, stood as the only person capable of saving the world. The demon god appeared, and he recognized it as the top-ranked monster, the boss of the Calamity. He was impressed by its enormous magic power and pressure. The beast stared at him, and he felt as if his whole body was being cut apart. The monster attacked him, and while he was protecting himself by creating a barrier, the beast suddenly started using 10th level magic. He realized it was using its full power from the start and was trying to break his barrier. Eventually, it succeeded. The protagonist was startled to see the demon using 6-element compound magic. He tried blocking the attack, but it became increasingly difficult to hold it back. After a massive blast, he fell to the ground. The boss monster stood in front of him. He wondered if this was truly the strongest monster, the demon god. He realized that at this rate, he would not be able to defeat it. Left with no choice, he decided to use his last option. The power of magic was determined by its rank, and the number of magic circles determined a mage's position. He thought that the highest rank a demon god could achieve was the 14th, while his limit was the 15th. So, he decided to use the 15th rank Innocent Void. He unleashed the attack on the demon god, and the beast fell to the ground. Shortly after, he collapsed too. He was pleased that he was finally able to defeat the boss. He thought that with this, the Calamity could eventually end. Having used all of his magic, he accepted that it wouldn't be the wrong way to die, as a great sage who had lived an extraordinary life. And then he died. His soul departed from his body, drifted into a hospital, and entered the body of a patient. Suddenly, the patient's fingers started moving. He sat up, shocked that he was alive. He wondered how he was still breathing after using all of his magic. He walked to a mirror, looked at his reflection, and was stunned to see a different face. At that moment, a doctor and nurse entered the room and called out to him. Later, while lying on the bed, the doctor removed his bandages. He was shocked to see the wound completely healed, and couldn't believe it. The doctor explained that he had lost consciousness and gone into critical condition due to a traffic accident, but now he was fully healed. The doctor added that it was almost as if he had been healed by holy magic. The protagonist thought it must be because his body had automatically healed itself with holy magic. He then wondered about the traffic accident. He asked the doctor if his magic power was completely depleted. The doctor was confused, not knowing what he meant by magic power. The protagonist explained that he was fighting monsters during the Calamity. The doctor and nurse were stunned and thought his mental status was altered. They asked him his name and the current year. He replied, "I am a Namato, and the year should be 1970, right?" The doctor, surprised, said that it seemed like a memory impairment and told him that his name was Kusanagi Minato and the year was He was shocked to know both his new name and the year. He looked around and noticed the devices in the room. He wondered if the thin screen was a TV since it produced a much clearer image than the ones from his previous life. He looked at the calendar and confirmed it was truly 2022. He was stunned when he saw the tablet, wondering what that small device was, since he had never seen such a thing before. He realized he had awakened in the future. The doctor told him that the Calamity he mentioned had happened 50 years ago and had never appeared again. He was shocked to learn that the calamity had ended and that no monsters had appeared since then. He was told that although there were still monsters, not many of them were left. He thought that if this was true, then the world might have achieved peace, and he thanked God for it. The doctor then told him that Ichikami Minato had died 50 years ago in the Great Calamity, sacrificing himself to save the world and its people, so he could not be that person. The protagonist realized that he had indeed died at that time, and after that he reincarnated into Kusanagi Minato. He wondered why he was reincarnated 50 years later. After some weeks, he went to his new home and entered the room, thinking it was his own. While looking through some books, he realized that Kusanagi Minato's parents had passed away when he was a child. After that, he was kicked out by his foster parents and sent to a boarding school. Since then, he had been getting by with his parents' inheritance. Lying on the bed, he thought to himself that there was no such thing as reincarnation magic. Looking at his ID card, he wondered if his reincarnation was the work of a god or if it had happened merely by chance. He also realized that he was now a student at the Kamui Magic Academy and thought that, in his time, there had been no reason for such an academy to even exist. He found it interesting. Suddenly, the ringing of his phone startled him. Tadanoan was calling. He wondered what he should do with this strange device, but he didn't care and tossed it aside. Soon after, he received a message from Tadanoan, who had heard about his discharge and told him to come to the academy, saying that he didn't get enough money. Later, at Kamui Magic Academy, he looked at the students and his heart raced at the thought of attending school again as an adult. He thought it was all great, until he saw a boy practicing magic by attacking a training dummy. He wondered what kind of magic this was, only to be disappointed and shocked by its weakness. He thought it couldn't be true. Their power was barely a tenth compared to even the newbie magicians of his time. He doubted whether they could even succeed in becoming true magicians. It made him realize that magic had declined greatly during this era. Later in Class 2A, he looked at his classmates while sitting at his desk. He felt excitement as if reliving his youth, and wondered if he might make friends again. Suddenly, some students appeared behind him. One of them was angry because he had ignored his text message. "Although you are Kusanagi, don't you dare ignore me," the boy said. The protagonist asked him who he was, which made the boy furious. He tried to kick him, but the protagonist dodged. The boy, Tadanoan, shouted angrily, "A powerless piece of trash like you dares to forget me." Looking at his phone screen, the protagonist finally remembered his name and realized Tadanoan had been his friend. He reached out his hand and asked him if he knew what being a friend truly meant. Tadanoan grabbed his hand, sneered, and said they should get along, but then he pulled away, grabbed him by the collar, and said he wasn't talking about that kind of friendship. He demanded that Kusanagi hand over money, since he still had plenty left from his parents' inheritance. In that moment, the protagonist realized that Kusanagi had been bullied. Tadanoan grew furious. While punching him, he shouted that he should not get so full of himself. Just then, a girl named Manhwa opened the classroom door and said, "Good morning." The protagonist blushed upon seeing her. Tadanoan warned him not to forget about the money, then left. Later, the teacher began the lecture, teaching them about the Great Calamity. In 1970, the teacher explained, "The great sage sacrificed himself to bring it to an end. That final calamity is what we now call the Great Calamity. Monsters appeared all over the world, and humanity despaired. But the pioneer of magic, known as the Great Sage, thought differently. He did not give up and defeated all the monsters by himself. In the end, he confronted the boss of the calamity, the demon god, and crushed it at the cost of his own life. After that, the calamity never occurred again." While listening with his head down, the protagonist suddenly heard the teacher ask the students, "Who was Ichikami Minato?" That a girl raised her hand, the teacher called on her, and she answered, "He was the only survivor of the first calamity, the first magician, and the reason why Kamui Magic Academy was built. He is the hero of the world, and the idol of every magician." The teacher nodded. "Correct. He was the greatest magician in human history. Remember this, because it will be on the test." The protagonist lifted his head and thought, they should stop. This is too embarrassing. He never expected to be tortured like this. He regretted coming to school and thought that maybe the doctor had been right. The world was at peace now, and that was why magicians had become weak. Looking out the window, he thought, it really is so peaceful. The class ended, and the teacher reminded the students that tomorrow would be their magic power assessment. Tadanoan approached him and sneered. "Did you hear about the assessment? I can't wait to see how pathetic your magic power is." The protagonist wondered if that guy would ever shut up. He saw no point in staying there, so he prepared to leave. But Tadanoan shouted after him, Your parents had no magic power either, right? Then he laughed and added, "Oh, sorry, I forgot you're an orphan." The protagonist called him a jerk, which made Tadanoan furious. "Don't get on your high horse," he shouted, using magic to attack. Everyone in class was shocked. "Are you insane? You'll use magic inside the classroom?" they cried out. Tadanoan ignored them and launched his attack. Mayua rushed toward him, thinking it was dangerous. After the colossal blast, everyone panicked and rushed away. She scolded Tadano, saying he couldn't use magic over a meager squabble as someone might get hurt, but he insisted that the protagonist was the one trying to pick a fight with him, so it wasn't his fault. As the smoke spread through the classroom, the protagonist emerged from it without a single scratch, leaving everyone stunned. Tadano was shocked to see him completely unscathed after taking his magic head-on. He wondered what was happening. The protagonist thought to himself, "If it's just level 1 magic, I can easily defend it with a magical barrier, but I didn't even need to use it actively." He said aloud that he had tolerated Tadano because he was still a child, but now he needed to be punished, while the students shivered in fear. An overwhelming surge of energy burst from his body, illuminating the entire classroom. Nobody could move. They all wondered what was happening, while Mayo stared in awe, unable to understand what kind of magic this was. As the protagonist approached Tadano and raised his hand toward him, the teacher suddenly arrived. "What is all this noise? Did someone use magic in here?" he demanded, looking around. The protagonist took a deep breath, smiled, and calmly said, "Nothing happened in the class, sensei. Maybe someone outside was using magic." But the teacher frowned. "There's no magic club activity scheduled on the school grounds." The protagonist shrugged. It could be that a student from another department was practicing. You know how keen young magicians are to show off their spells. The teacher eyed the smoke, lingering in the room. "And what about this smoke?" He quickly replied. "It came from outside the classroom as well." Since it was Kusanagi's words, the teacher reluctantly accepted it and told the students to return to their seats. He promised to find the culprit himself, then left. In his thoughts, the protagonist apologized to the teacher, knowing he had just created false evidence to cover up the situation. Everyone in the class was still shocked. Tadano cursed under his breath. Meanwhile, the protagonist thought, even though the student's magic level is far too low, I wonder if they could ever face real monsters. Even if there are no calamities, monsters still roam this world. These people, they're not strong enough. I should check for myself. Later, in old Shibuya, most of the buildings had been destroyed during the catastrophe years ago. While surveying the area, he realized the place had changed greatly. He scanned the site but couldn't sense any monsters nearby. Everything was ruined. He thought the police might have already dealt with them. After traveling some distance, however, he suddenly sensed a monster's aura and a lone human presence. He hurried toward the source. There, he saw a terrified girl sitting on the ground, begging the monster to stay away. The beast opened its mouth to devour her, but the protagonist appeared just in time. The monster roared, but he easily struck it down. The girl, still shaking, glared at him in shock. He noticed her badge and realized she was a police magician. He told her to be careful next time. She thanked him as he left, but wondered to herself who he really was. He hadn't even chanted a single spell. After walking some distance, he uncovered his face and thought it was best to hide his identity for now, since he had just reincarnated and didn't want to stand out. He reflected that even the police's magic had grown weak. That girl had almost been killed by a low-level monster. He realized not only the students but even the authorities of this time could not truly defeat monsters. It seems, even in this era, they still need my power, he thought. Determined, he decided to annihilate all the surrounding monsters for now. The next day at the Magic Academy, the teacher reminded the students, "As you've been informed, today we will measure your magic power. Be sure to check both your magic amount and your attribute. They are the most important values if you hope to become professional magicians." The protagonist wondered if he could measure his power without relying on such a machine. He thought to himself, even the teacher doesn't understand something so basic. Magic perception is the foundation of all magic. While he was lost in thought, Mayua hesitated for a moment, then decided it was the right time to speak to him. Their classmates were shocked to see her initiating a conversation. "I suppose it's time we properly introduced ourselves," she said, with a confident smile. "I am Mayua, the second daughter of the noble house of Mayua." When he asked her what a magic noble was, she was stunned. She explained that her family was one of the 4 great noble houses that led the community of magicians. The protagonist frowned. "In my time, nothing like that existed. I've never even heard of such families." After observing her, he realized that despite her noble background, her magic power wasn't particularly impressive. So even so-called prominent magician families have declined this much, he thought. Mayo, on the other hand, was offended. What's wrong with him? He should be more grateful that I so generously started a conversation with him. She fumed inwardly. Meanwhile, Tadano stared at them suspiciously, wondering what kind of deal was going on between them. The protagonist finally asked her directly, "So what business do the mage nobility have with me?" Mayowa was enraged. The more he talks, the more he pisses me off. She forced herself to take a deep breath and calm down. Mizuha tried to calm herself down, reminding herself that she was a noble woman and should think about her dignity. What's wrong with him? She wondered. Then she remembered that when he was hit by magic yesterday, he came out unscathed. There must be a reason. She was about to ask him about the incident, but the teacher interrupted, telling everyone to get ready. The protagonist left happily, as it was finally time for the assessment. She called out to him, but he ignored her. Maya thought, fine, I'll just see his true power during the measurement. The first to be tested was Tadano Khan. He poured his energy into the device, and his magic power was revealed to be 1000. With the fire attribute, he was pleased with himself since it was better than his previous results. The protagonist thought, so 1000 is considered decent. That means the measuring standard hasn't changed in the past 50 years. Next was Mizuha Yuika's turn. She filled the device with her energy, and the reading displayed 2000 with the water attribute. Everyone was thrilled. The teacher praised her and Tadano, saying their magic power was at the top of this year's class, and that they would make fantastic magicians. The students cheered them on, already expecting great things from Tadano, the fire prodigy, and Mawa-sama, the water noble. But Kusanagi Minato thought, she might be joking, right? At the top with just 2000, that's barely above an amateur. Meanwhile, Maiwa looked at him proudly, thinking this was the proof of her noble family's strength. He found her smug expression unbearable. Now it was his turn. The students whispered among themselves, recalling that he had ranked at the very bottom the previous year. Though he was good at studies, his talent in magic had always been considered poor. Tadano smirked, hoping he would embarrass himself in front of Yua. She, on the other hand, smiled confidently, certain that his power would never surpass hers. Standing before the device, the protagonist wondered what he should do. Back in my day, I stood out too much. It was such a pain. Should I hold back a little? But then, placing his hand on the device, he decided to give it his all. Let's see if this machine can even measure the power of the great sage. The moment his energy surged into the device, it overflowed violently, spreading throughout the building. Everyone froze, unable to comprehend what was happening. The meter spun out of control. Unable to stop, finally the entire machine exploded, showering the room with fragments. Everyone was stunned. The overwhelming pressure of his magic had been unbearable for them to even sense. The protagonist thought, just as I expected. The machine broke from only a little bit of seriousness. None of them here can even grasp the scope of my magic power. Can they really call themselves magicians? The teacher rushed over. Is everyone all right? The students assured him they were fine. He turned to the protagonist. What about you, Kusanagi? You were right in the middle of that explosion. I'm fine, he replied calmly. The teacher sighed, rubbing his chin. This is the first time I've ever seen a measuring device destroyed. Perhaps it was defective, but this is troublesome. Without the result, we don't know your magic power or attribute. The protagonist asked if that was a problem. The teacher explained, normally we assign students to combat groups based on their assessment results. But since the mission broke, He glanced at Tadano. Would you be willing to take him into your group? Tadano grinned wickedly and winked at his friend. Of course, sensei. Leave it to me. The teacher nodded in relief. Good. With you in charge, I can rest easy. He leaned closer to Kusanagi and whispered, I'll be looking forward to seeing your performance. Later, they traveled to Old Shibuya, where the scars of the Great Catastrophe were still visible. Many buildings lay in ruins, and monsters continued to inhabit the area. The teacher explained. This part of the city was abandoned. At regular intervals, magicians and police conduct subjugation missions here. Today, it's your turn to contribute. But don't worry, half the demons have already been removed. The protagonist hadn't expected a practical combat class. Still, even with a few monsters left, the students should be able to handle them if they work in groups, he thought. Looking around, he realized he had been there. Just last night, something felt off. I already eliminated the monsters here. So why are there still traces of them? Meanwhile, some students were chatting casually. Let's compete, one said. I won't lose today, another replied eagerly. The protagonist shook his head. Carefree, even in a practical exam. The teacher announced, the practical class begins now. Remember, teamwork is the key. As the others moved out, the protagonist lingered. Tadano sneered at him. Stay out of our way, I'm being kind to you here, so don't get carried away. I won't go easy on you this time. The protagonist calmly brushed the dust from his shirt. If you don't like me, then just ignore me. That only enraged Tadano further. Don't talk back to me, he roared. The protagonist sighed, thinking, this guy really is the bottom of the barrel. Tadano sneered, calling him barrel scum and saying he was nothing but trash. Still, he couldn't understand why Manhwa seemed so interested in him. After thinking for a moment, Tadano came to a conclusion and asked bluntly, do you like her? The protagonist stayed calm, but Tadano grew furious. Before the argument could escalate further, a sudden noise echoed behind them. Tadano, ignoring it, cast a spell and shouted that he would kill him today. Don't do it, the protagonist warned. But Tadano snapped. There's no point apologizing now. Look behind you, the protagonist said firmly. I won't fall for such childish tricks, Tadano scoffed. Yet the sound grew louder. When Tadano finally turned his head, he froze in terror. Behind him stood a massive monster. The students were horrified. None of them expected a demon soldier to appear here. Why is there a demon soldier in Shibuya? One of them shouted. Tadano's friend paled. Only you can fight it. Please, defeat it. Overconfident, Tadano smirked. This will be light work. He cast his fire spell and launched it at the beast. The flames roared against its body, and Tadano declared the job finished. Nice shot, his friend applauded, relieved. But their smiles faded instantly. The monster stepped forward unharmed, not a single scratch on its body. Tadano's confidence shattered. Impossible, he thought. My magic had no effect at all. The protagonist sighed. Of course. A demon soldier can't be taken down with something as weak as level 1 magic. The monster advanced, and the students trembled in fear. Tadano nearly wept, convinced his death was near. As the beast reached out its massive hand to crush him, it suddenly hesitated. Its eyes locked on the protagonist standing calmly behind them. The demon stepped back instinctively, remembering its fallen brethren. The protagonist walked forward. A demon soldier can always tell who is stronger, he said quietly. The students panicked, cried out, you can't defeat it with level 1 magic. We'll all die here. The monster raised its arm and unleashed Rock Break, a devastating level 2 spell. The ground shook as boulders tore free, hurling toward them. But the protagonist only smirked. He lifted his hand and released a simple fire arrow. A level 1 spell. The moment it struck, there was an earth-shattering explosion. Dust and smoke filled the air. The students coughed and blinked in disbelief. What just happened? Tadano's face went pale. Did Kusanagi kill that demon soldier? No. Impossible. There's no way he could do that. He desperately tried to convince himself otherwise. If it had been my fire magic, I could accept it. But him? Never. Meanwhile, the protagonist silently wondered. Why are demon soldiers appearing here in Shibuya? I eliminated all the monsters last night. Something about this is wrong. Could this be a sign of another disaster? His heart grew heavy as he remembered the past when demons had attacked humans and countless lives were lost. Even if Calamity comes again, he swore to himself, I will save everyone this time. The demon soldier collapsed in defeat, confirming the truth. Tadano slammed his fist against the wall in frustration while Manhwa watched everything unfold from behind cover. She cast a simple aqua saucer, her level 1 spell, at the remains of a lesser beast. Her classmates applauded her loudly, praising her brilliance. She only sighed. Ordinary people are such a drag. Something so small surprises them. But I am a genius of the Minato family. It can't be helped. When she turned, she saw the protagonist standing near Tadano. He looked completely different from the timid, talentless boy she once knew. She remembered he hadn't even chanted a spell. Did he just use magic without chanting? She wondered, stunned. And with level 1 at that, impossible. She recalled the fixed hierarchy of demon ranks. The demon king at rank 2, the demon god at rank 1. Every magician knew it was impossible to defeat a demon soldier with less than level 3 magic. Yet he had done it effortlessly. When he walked past her hiding place, she instinctively shrank back. Why am I hiding from him? She asked herself. You know, he said suddenly, his voice calm, peeking around like that is quite the hurry. She gasped. How did you know I was here? He sighed. If you're a mage, it'd be insane not to notice. With that, he turned and left. Wait, she called after him. What do you mean by that? But he was already gone. From the rooftop above, he watched her silently before scanning the area. No more demon soldiers, but plenty of magical beasts remain. If Tado struggled so much, the others will never hold their own against these creatures. Determined, he raised his hand. Rage and power swirled around him. At Shibuya Station, he unleashed Barret, a level 2 spell, firing a storm of magical bullets. They streaked across the night sky, so bright the students below mistook them for shooting stars. Manhwa's eyes widened. That was magic? But it feels like he has multiple abilities at once. All around them, the monsters were annihilated. The beast attacked her relentlessly, but before it could land a fatal blow, it was suddenly struck by the protagonist's magic and cut into countless pieces. Her classmate rushed to her side and asked if she was all right, while she stood there, dazed and confused. From the rooftop, the protagonist watched everything unfold. He felt a strange satisfaction from killing the beasts, but soon realized he had overdone it. Most of them were already dead, which meant the class would struggle to continue their exercise. He sighed, thinking he needed to hold himself back next time. He leapt down from the building, deciding there was no need to keep hiding his power. Yet, standing out too much was also a hassle for him. Making his way toward the teacher and other students who had gathered, he blended into the group. The teacher examined the aftermath with a serious face. Strange. How could so many magical beasts still remain? The herd should have been mostly hunted down. He observed the corpses carefully. No, these were all taken out in one strike, by someone very skilled. He suspected it might be null attribute magic, capable of firing countless bullets at once, but he had never seen such a technique before. If not for this magician, things would have gotten troublesome, he admitted to himself. Firing 2 of those bullets isn't difficult, but launching more than 6 at once, that's nearly impossible. Could this really have been done by students? The students, meanwhile, were furious. Teacher, why were there so many magic beasts here? We nearly died. The teacher bowed apologetically. I was told the police had already cleared most of the pack, but I should have confirmed it from the school side as well. I put you all in danger. I am truly sorry. One girl stepped forward. But someone saved us. Didn't they? I want to thank them for saving my life. The teacher frowned. It wasn't the police, nor any official mage, which means an unlicensed magician, perhaps. But whoever it was, I am grateful to them. Later, the students whispered among themselves about the mysterious magical bullets, trying to guess who could have used them. The protagonist, standing silently in the crowd, felt relieved. Everyone was safe. Tadano and his friends were safe too, though Tadano glared at him furiously from across the group. Mawa, however, looked at him thoughtfully. He defeated a demon soldier with level 1 magic. Could that infinite magic have been his work too? She shook her head. No, impossible. A student can only have one attribute. I've never seen anyone capable of wielding both fire and null magic. Even him, it can't be. Still, she couldn't deny the truth. He had slain the demon soldier. Her thoughts wavered. Just, what is he? Meanwhile, Tadano's friend muttered suspiciously. What if all those glowing bullets were his doing too? Could it be? Don't be ridiculous, Tadano snapped. There's no way a loser like him could do that. Something's fishy about him. His friend hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, he used to be a coward. Maybe he's cheating somehow. Tadano clenched his fists. Rage burned inside him. Cheating. Or trickery. Either way, I'll expose him. After school, on his way home, the protagonist was ambushed. Tadano and his lackeys stood waiting for him. You again? The protagonist sighed. You're really persistent. Wouldn't studying magic be a better use of your time? You talk too much. Tadano spat. Cheater, don't play dumb with us. There's no way you can use magic like that. Stop lying. The protagonist blinked. Cheater? When did I ever— Shut up. Tadano roared. Stop playing dumb. There's no way you pulled that off without some dirty trick. The protagonist only looked at him quietly, so unreasonable. They really think I cheated? Tadano sneered. Follow me. I'll give you credit for not running away. But today, I'll reveal your true face. There's no need for me to run, the protagonist replied calmly. Stop spouting nonsense. Tadano charged at him and swung his fist. Let's see if you can fight without your magic. He and his friends attacked, but their punches and kicks bounced off harmlessly. Not a single scratch appeared on the protagonist. What's going on? Tadano yelled. Why isn't he even hurt? The protagonist thought to himself, my magic power defends me automatically. No matter how much they hit me, it won't work. Maybe I should pretend to get hurt so they'll stop. As the bullies kept striking him, a clear voice suddenly cut through the air. What do you think you're doing? They froze. Mizuha stood behind them, her eyes sharp with fury. We were just playing around, Tadano stammered. Don't lie to me, she snapped. I know you've been bullying Kusanagi, students of our Magic Academy acting like common thugs. Aren't you ashamed of yourselves? Tadano's face twisted. Damn him. Because of him, even Mizuha hates me now. She stepped forward and grabbed the protagonist's hand. Come on. Let's get out of here. The protagonist blinked in shock, staring at her hand, holding his. Tadano's rage boiled over. Bastard, he screamed. His fury erupted as he cursed and launched a massive fire spell. Manhwa, the protagonist shouted. But Tadano couldn't hear her. Consumed with hatred, he hurled his magic to kill him. His companions joined in, unleashing spells together. The flames roared toward them, engulfing the street in a storm of fire. Mizuha raised her arms to shield herself, panicking. Tadano sneered. Even cheating won't save you this time. His friend thought it looked terrible and wondered if they were dead, but he felt they were idiots for being afraid. He told them they had accidentally used magic outside of school, which got out of control, and Kusanagi just got caught in the middle. That was all that happened there, but he thought they did go too far. The protagonist appeared from the dust and said that he had tolerated them, thinking they were just brats, but their stupidity could only be cured by death, so it was time to discipline them. They were shocked to see him alive, even after getting hit by that much magic. Kusanagi said that he could not tolerate them any longer, as they had dragged Yua into this, and asked them how rotten they were. Tadano-kan said it was all his fault, as they dared to make him a fool, and declared they would keep attacking until he died. The protagonist made a small magical circle. They laughed, wondering what kind of crappy magic circle it was, and shot at him, saying that this time he would surely die. But the protagonist used magic drain on them, and they were bound by it. He told them to let it sink in. After a few seconds, no strength was left in their bodies, and they fell to the ground unconscious. He sat next to them and thought that he had absorbed only a little bit of magic, yet they were already out. He wondered if it would make them reflect a bit. She asked him what magic he had used, what had happened there, and why Tadano and his friends were unconscious. While he was leaving, she told him to wait a minute and bombarded him with non-stop questions about what kind of magic he used and what had happened there. She asked him why, if he wasn't supposed to be able to use magic properly, he could do such things, and she wondered who exactly he was. He let out a cold sigh and thought she was so annoying. He told her that, instead of asking him questions, she should be saying something else to him. She turned her face around, then said she would give her thanks for helping her. She looked back at him, and after showing her gratitude, he had vanished again. She got enraged and shouted, demanding to know where he had gone this time. Later that night, he went to Old Shibuya and scouted the area to check for monsters, as he had a terrible feeling. Although he had killed all the monsters in the afternoon, the area was already full of them again. He wondered if that was some kind of omen and thought that, if it was only this city, he could handle it. But he could also sense them in other places. He felt it must be too much for the police, and the magicians weren't good enough either. He knew he couldn't kill all the monsters in Japan alone. He wondered what he should do about this, and began devising a plan. He jumped from a building, deciding wipe out the monsters around first. But he knew he needed to take care of it carefully so he wouldn't stand out. He used magic bullets on the monsters below, and killed them. Meanwhile, a drunk man was walking alone in the street, singing, when a magical beast appeared behind him and opened its mouth to eat him. But the protagonist attacked it in the blink of an eye and dragged it behind a wall. The drunk man looked back, but no one was there. He thought it was just his imagination. While the protagonist was beating the monster, he looked back, wondering if he had been caught. A lady nearby recorded the incident of him attacking the monster and uploaded it, feeling satisfied that she had captured viral-worthy material. Later, at the principal's office, their teacher told them that they had come to know that some students from the school were seen using magic outside the school grounds. He said that if it were true, they would have no choice but to expel those students. so he wanted them to explain what exactly had happened. Tadano said that they didn't use magic. Instead, he pointed at the protagonist and claimed that Kus and Ai came to them looking for a fight. The protagonist was impressed at how casually he could lie. He thought he couldn't keep his mouth shut, as it would be a drag, so he decided to explain himself. But before he could, Yua spoke up and said that it was all lies. They were stunned and looked at her while she, enraged, told the teacher that Kusagi was being bullied by Tadano and his friends, who were the first to use magic. The teacher asked her if the protagonist also used magic. She said yes, but insisted it was all in self-defense, since he hadn't done anything wrong. The protagonist was stunned. Tadano argued that they also hadn't done anything wrong, but Yua told him to shut up. She asked what kind of person bullies someone and then blames them when faced with the consequences. She asked if he wasn't ashamed of himself. But Tado said it was all the protagonist's fault and called him trash, unworthy of the school. He claimed that he had only been cleaning up trash. Yua shot back, telling him that he was the one unworthy of the school. Tado told her that he was at the top of the class and the only one worthy of standing beside her, not Kusagi. She wondered what he was talking about, and he told her to open her eyes and not waste them on that unworthy guy. Then he told her to look at him and become his woman. She said there was no chance for him. He was shocked. She rejected him, saying he was nothing but a violent bully. The confession made zero sense, and her words struck him like an arrow. The protagonist looked at Tadano, who was lying on the ground, and thought that although he knew Tadano deserved this, it was still brutal. The principal said that, after hearing from all sides, it looked like Tadano and his friends were at fault, and Kusagi had only used magic for self-defense. He said that they did not need people who used magic for selfish desires, so he expelled them all. But Tadano's friend requested the principal not to expel them, insisting they had only done this because Ju-chan told them to. The teacher told the protagonist and Yua to return to their classes. They asked for permission to leave and exited the dean's office. On their way back, she was furious. She said he was the worst, and that she hadn't been that pissed off in a while. He asked her what would happen to Tadano and his friends, now that they were expelled. She told him they wouldn't be able to become mages anymore, which was obvious. Then, she scolded him, telling him that he needed to speak up for himself. He thought he was going to reply, but she spoke up again. He looked at her and she wondered what was wrong. He told her that, now that he thought about it, she had saved him quite a few times. Once in class when they got into a fight, and again in the dean's office. He called her a crazy good girl. She blushed, told him to shut up, and rushed into the classroom first. He smiled, touched his body and thought about how Kusanagi Minato had died, while he had been reincarnated. He wondered if he had been bullied to death, or if it was just a normal car accident. He didn't know, but he was sure about one thing: they were guilty of something, and he hoped this would pay off later. Meanwhile, Haruka and Katsuragi Ryuji, who were in the third-year class, visited the dean's office. They asked him if students had really been using magic outside the school. Some other students also caught wind of the situation. The dean admitted it was true, but reassured them that no harm had been done to the general public. Then one of the students asked why he had called her. The dean explained that the student who had gotten caught up in this was Mizuha. She understood the situation and thanked him for reporting it to her. The dean asked her to give his regards to her father. She told him to rest assured, as her father was willing to invest in the school. A boy asked her if what the dean told them was true, that Kusagi might be absurdly strong. She replied that fighting multiple times would be nearly impossible and that he wouldn't be able to win unless there was a huge power discrepancy. The boy asked if she thought Kusagi might actually be stronger than them. She said no, but admitted she was interested. When he asked what they would do, she said they would confirm the student's competence first, and then decide whether they should expel her sister. That sounded interesting to him. Meanwhile, the protagonist sat in class, feeling bored. Because everything was so peaceful, he had lost all motivation. Some students were looking at a video on their phones and said it was the Black Mage. He was startled to hear that name, and wondered if it was the same as a magic noble, but decided to ignore it since it didn't concern him. The teacher entered the class, called his name, and told him that the students who hadn't been measured last time would now undergo the magic power assessment. She looked at him, wondering if he was healed, and thought that this time she would finally find out what he was capable of. But then, she was stunned to see her sister there, and wondered what she was doing. When it was the protagonist's turn, the teacher told him to begin the magic power assessment. He thought he should be careful this time, since he had destroyed the device during his last examination. He placed his hand on the device and tried to control his power output. The numbers on the device moved slowly. He got tired, and the teacher asked him if he was all right. He realized that this time they had managed to get his result. His power level was 100 and he had no attributes. She was shocked to learn that he had no attributes while her sister looked at the score. The students whispered, saying his score was the lowest in their batch. They thought having no attributes was quite rare, but also believed it meant he was useless. At the same time, Katsuragi Ryuji realized there was no truth behind the fight and the rumors of him defeating the delinquents by himself. She told him to let it go, as they had finished their business there. The students mocked the protagonist, saying he had gotten tired just from the reassessment. He told his friend that he would end up that way if his magic power was that low. The teacher told him not to overthink it, since the amount of magic power one has doesn't mean everything. Mount Haruka, however, thought something was wrong. The protagonist had defeated the demon soldier, so he should have been able to use dual attributes like fire and none. She had never heard of someone adjusting the amount of their magic power and wondered what exactly he had done. The protagonist took a peaceful breath, satisfied that he had managed to get the perfect result after some precise magic manipulation even though it had taken a toll on him. Luckily, he regained his composure. While returning, he asked Yoa if she had also been in the assessment room. She said she was just a little curious about his magic power and attributes. Mao Haruka told her to stop, and the protagonist asked who they were. She replied that she was the eldest daughter of the Mao family. The guy next to her was her fellow, and both of them were third-year students. He asked her if she needed anything, but she said she no longer had any business with him. He then went near her sister and said that it seemed like they weren't even a match against the delinquents. He had heard that she was saved by Kusanagi, whose magic power amount was merely 100, and asked her if it was true. She confirmed that it was. She told Yua to quit the academy, but Yua asked her why she should stop. Then her sister asked her if she had ever won against her even once, whether it was in academics, sports, or magic craft. Yua had never beaten her at anything, so her sister believed she was not suited to be a mage. She said that only she herself needed to become a mage, and that was more than enough. Yua wanted to give her opinion, but her sister told her that all she needed to do was listen. She demanded again that Yua quit the academy and enroll in a regular school. As Yua began to cry, her sister asked if she had heard her. Yua was about to say yes when the protagonist suddenly interrupted, telling her that she was being quite arrogant. She asked him what he had said, and he explained that she kept talking non-stop without bothering to hear what the other party wanted to say. He asked her if that wasn't arrogance, then what he should call it. Mana Ruka told him that this was a conversation between family members, so an outsider should stay out of it, but the protagonist countered, asking if she really called that a conversation, because to him it just sounded like she was ordering her sister around. This made her angry, and she asked him what he meant. He said that to coerce someone out of their way of living was not something even a family member had the right to do. The same went for forcing someone to give up their dreams. She argued back, saying that her younger sister simply didn't have what it took to be a mage, since she had never won against her even once. Yua cried, thinking that her sister was right. She had no talent. She had been telling herself all along that she was a genius and had the aptitude to be a mage, but the reality was that she had never defeated her sister. Kusanagi Minato then said that Yua could win against her sister. Yua looked up at his face in shock. Her older sister was also surprised and asked him if he had really said that. He admitted that it was impossible for now. Of course, but in 2 weeks, Yua would be able to win against her. Her sister then suggested they have a 2-on-2 magic duel. He repeated, 2-on-2 matches, and she asked if he was planning to run away after spouting such nonsense. But he calmly told her he wasn't talking nonsense. He would also participate in the duel. He turned to Yua and asked for her opinion. Though confused, she gave it some thought and finally agreed to participate. He then declared that everything was decided, and told Aruka that if they won, she would no longer be allowed to interfere in this matter. Aruka smirked and said that if she and her partner won, then Yua must quit the academy. As she left, she warned him that she wouldn't hold back, so they had better be prepared to face reality. Later on the rooftop, Yua confessed to him that she wanted his help. She wanted him to teach her more about magic. The protagonist was a little worried, wondering why she had suddenly called him up there. He told her that he was just a lowly mage with only 100 magic power, and asked if she was sure she wanted to be taught by someone like him. But Yua told him she knew he was hiding his real power. He was much stronger than her, and surely knew how to make her stronger as well. That was why he had been confident enough to say she could win against her sister. He thought to himself that people like Aruka were the type who desperately wanted to control everything. That was why he had provoked her into suggesting a fight. Then Yua bowed in front of him and begged him to teach her magic. He couldn't decline when she was begging him like that, and besides, he also needed to prepare for what was going to happen. Helping raise a mage might not be so bad. He agreed, but told her that she must follow everything he said and could not back out midway. She was overjoyed and accepted. Kusanagi Minato told her they would begin right away, starting from today. But then he wondered where they should practice. Yua asked him if he would come to her place. Later, at her house, he looked around and commented on how big it was. She told him that her father was a noble mage, so it was natural. She thought to herself that this was the first time she had invited a boy to her house, and wondered if he found it strange. But she assured herself she had no weird intentions. While she was still thinking, the protagonist told her to start the practice. Since she didn't hear him, he called her by name. She was stunned and asked why he had called her by her given name. He explained that since her sister also went by Mizuha, people wouldn't know who he was addressing if he didn't. He asked her if she disliked it and whether she wanted him to call her by something else. But she shook her head and said no, he could call her Yua. Then they began the practice, and she asked him to take care of her. He said he would, but first he wanted her to answer a few questions. He asked her what exactly she knew about magic power. She thought the question was easy, and she said that it was the energy inside their body needed to perform magic. Then he asked her about incantations, and she replied that they were like programs, a way to turn magic power into magic craft, automatically. So, he asked her if it was possible to increase her magic power deliberately. She answered that it was impossible, as the limit of one's magic power amount was determined before birth, and would stop increasing once they reached a certain age. She laughed and felt proud, sure that she had answered all of his questions perfectly. But then he told her that all her answers were incorrect. She cried upon hearing that and asked him what he meant. He wondered who would have guessed that the current mages were so foolish, and he began to question what had happened in the last 50 years. He explained that magic power wasn't just within their bodies, that incantations were simply tools to back up magic craft, and that it was possible to increase magic power intentionally. She said he was lying, because if it were true, it would have overturned the teachings of the Magic Craft Academy. But he said it didn't matter, whether she believed him or not. She told her that he would teach her about the 3 things he had just mentioned. He instructed her to sit, as he would channel magic power into her, and told her to inform him when she felt it. She asked if he could really make her feel magic power. He replied that she couldn't grow stronger if she couldn't sense it, and instructed her to close her eyes because he was going to touch her now. He poured his energy into her body but soon realized that it wasn't sufficient, so he decided to pour in more. Still, she could not feel such strong energy. After he continued channeling for some time, she finally said that she was feeling something. Her back was getting hot. He told her that what she felt was magic power perception. She then realized what he meant by feeling magic power. He told her to remember that sensation, because once she could sense it, she would be able to detect and locate magic power in nature. He told her to make it her goal from now on. Ya smirked and said that she was the second daughter of the Mage family, so she would master it in no time, but in his mind he thought that she had only managed to sense it after he poured that much magic power into her. It seemed she didn't have the talent to be a mage. 1 week later she cried, because she still could not do it. He reflected that, although she had been practicing diligently for a week, her progress was extremely slow. It was almost time, so he told her he would pour magic power into her body again. He placed his hand on her back, and channeled energy into her once more. After some time, he told her to open her eyes. She was stunned. She could see it. She was delighted to finally see magic power and wondered if that was what it truly looked like. She was mesmerized, thinking about how beautiful it was, and wondered if she could also see Kusanagi's power, but when she looked at him she could barely see his energy, which confused her. The protagonist told her that she had done her best. She proudly replied that it was natural, since she was herself. Then he told her that now that she had managed to perceive magic power, it was time to learn how to adjust the amount of magical power she used. He explained that if she could use 50% of her magic power, she could attack twice. But if she managed to adjust it to use only 20% in one attack, she could attack 5 times. He told her to always use magic craft with the appropriate amount of magic, discard unnecessary excess, focus on efficiency, and push her magic power to its limits. After her magic power depleted, the amount would increase after recovery, allowing her to maximize its use again. Once she could fully sense magic power, she would be able to expand her strength even further. He asked her if this was different from what the Magic Craft Academy taught. She admitted that it was, but said that she believed him and would not doubt him anymore. He told her that they should move on to the next stage of training and asked her to step back a little because it was time for practice battle, but she said it was fine. She also wanted to see his true power. She then used the first level of aqua sorcery, but he easily blocked it with a barrier. She was shocked that all of her magic craft had been nullified. He explained that it was the first level, a basic non-attribute magic barrier. He asked her that if she couldn't even destroy this, how did she plan on beating Ruka? She attacked him with ice bullets, but he instructed her to move, reminding her that staying still against a mage meant defeat. She poured all her power into her attacks until she was drained and fell to the ground, saying she couldn't do it. He told her that she was being inefficient, using too much magic power. He explained that if she could learn to adjust her magic power, she would no longer need any incantations, and could use magic craft as long as she had energy. Then he told her to watch. He used Fire Blast, releasing flames in her direction. At first it produced only slight power, imitating her style. Then he showed her his own way of performing the magic attack. It was much stronger and far more controlled than hers. She observed carefully and noticed that in her own attacks, the magic craft dispersed and scattered. He told her that she was correct, and explained that it was possible to perform magic craft without incantations, as long as she could adjust her magic power. She asked him if he meant that she no longer needed to chant, and he said yes. He instructed her to first learn how to shorten her incantations. Once she could adjust her magic power, she wouldn't need any incantation at all. He explained that it would be a great advantage in battle if she could shorten her chants, since she would no longer waste magic power on them. She said, "In other words, you're saying it would strengthen my magic craft." He told her she was right, and ordered her to begin again. She hesitated, wondering if it wasn't too soon, but he told her that if she didn't do it now, it would be meaningless. He warned her to practice as if her life depended on it. She began crying under the pressure and later collapsed on the ground. He told her that she was still alive, and that they would be doing this every day from now on, but he soon realized she wasn't even listening anymore. That night, he went to Harajuku to survey the area for demons, and noticed that monsters were still present. Their numbers hadn't decreased, despite constant exterminations. He wondered what exactly was happening on Earth. Suddenly, he sensed one of the monsters and turned around. The creature was attacking a human, so he rushed forward, defeated the monster, and asked the girl if she was all right. Terrified though she was, she didn't want to lose the chance to capture proof of the black mage. She quickly took his picture. Shocked, he immediately left. He was surprised that she had taken his photo without consent and simply thanked him for saving her. He wondered what was wrong with people these days. To avoid such incidents in the future, he decided to wear a mask. The next morning, he was back at Yua's house. She was exhausted after only a few attempts at practice. He thought about how few days were left before the duel. Though she was progressively improving, she was still lacking in every field compared to her sister. There was no way she would win if things continued like this. He told her it was fine if she wanted to give up. Yua replied that she had always been compared to her sister and had never been able to beat her at anything. She had been forced to give up on many things in life, but magic craft was the one thing she refused to give up on. He told her that she wouldn't win this way. She asked him to be stricter with her. He warned her that he wouldn't hold back now, and she smiled, saying that was exactly what she wanted. They resumed their training. By evening, she was completely drained, so he carried her on his back. The next day, she attacked him, and he told her that she had passed because she managed to break through his barrier. She fell to the ground in joy, finally succeeding at last. He praised her for working so hard to achieve this. On the day of the magic duel, they arrived at the Magic Academy. He asked if she was ready, and she confidently answered yes. Suddenly, they were surrounded by reporters. The press asked Manhwa Yua to comment on the duel and whether she had a conflict with her older sister. Surprised, she asked what they were doing there. The reporters explained that the duel between the Mao sisters was big news and it was natural for the press to cover it. The protagonist remarked that student battles highlighted just how important the lineage of a noble mage family was. Later, they entered the stadium, where everyone had gathered to witness the duel. Looking around at the massive crowd, he asked her if she didn't think it was too much. She replied that magic duels were rare and that it felt more like a grand event. The commentator called the two participants to the stage. Yua nervously said yes. Feeling unwell, he encouraged her to do her best. His words gave her strength, and she thought he was a mysterious person because his encouragement always resounded in her heart. Soon, Yua and Ruka were standing face to face. He asked Yua if she wasn't going to run away, and she replied, Of course not. Why would I run away? Ruka looked down on her, calling her uncouth, and asked if she really thought she could win against someone like her. But Yua stood confident, declaring she would defeat her. Ruka studied her closely and admitted that she seemed to have made progress in the past 2 weeks. Yua, however, thought to herself that the gap in their magic power was enormous. Even so, she resolved not to lose. The duel commenced and the commentator signaled the beginning of the fight. Yua felt as though she had shortened her chant, but she still remained stationary while her sister moved continuously. The protagonist noted that constant movement was the basis of mage battles, so he assumed Ruka also understood the reason behind conflicts between two mages. In contrast, Yua was so nervous that she forgot to move. This cost her the advantage of speed. Ruka attacked with first-level aqua sorcery, but Yua managed to counter it. Surprised, Ruka remarked that she was getting stronger. Stunned, Ruka admitted that Yua had become stronger in just 2 weeks. Yua was glad to hear her sister's praise, but Ruka immediately dismissed it, asking what she was so happy about. She clarified that it was only a comparison and not meant as honor. Then Ruka declared that she would increase her magic level. She unleashed second-level water blitz. The force was overwhelming and Yua was unable to withstand it. She was thrown back, collapsing against the pavilion. Yura was severely injured. Kusanagi Minato looked at her and thought that her only chance of winning lay in enchanting speed, but he knew her opponent was far more powerful. Manhwa Ruka came forward and told him that he was cruel, asking whether he wouldn't help his disciple as he had protected her, but he replied that there was no need for that. When she pressed him for an explanation, she was shocked to see her younger sister standing again. Ruka couldn't believe Yua had endured her level 2 magic attack and was still on her feet. But Yua declared that she would not lose, because magical craft was the only thing she had. Even if she lost everything else, this was the one thing she would never give up on. She poured all her magic power into her attack, but she was unable to land a single hit. Even as exhaustion overtook her, Yua cried out that she would surely defeat her sister, but her body gave way and she collapsed, her energy completely drained. The referee announced that contestant Yua had depleted all her magic power and declared the victory for contestant Ruka. Yua was devastated by her loss. The protagonist went to her side and tried to calm her down. He reflected that the duel had been a test of magic usage and adjustment, but in the end she had lost due to her lesser amount of magic power. Ruka sneered, asking him if he now understood that her younger sister had no talent, and added that he must have thought the same himself.
He admitted that it was true.
Yua was clumsy, slow to progress, inefficient, and grew even weaker under pressure. But he continued. She was also a hard worker, someone who diligently practiced every single day like a fool. He asked if such effort could really be called a failure. He concluded that though she had lost, he liked hardworking people like her. She was his disciple, and he found it displeasing when Ruka insulted her. Yar began to cry at his words. Ruka scoffed, saying he was arrogant for someone with only 100 magic power, but he shot back that even with that much, he could defeat her. Ruka smirked and told him he was good at spouting nonsense, better at that than anything else, and declared that she was not the one meant to be his opponent. At that moment, Ryuji appeared, excited that it was finally his turn. Ruka urged him to hurry up and finish things, and he replied that she didn't need to say it twice. Kusanagi gently carried Yoa to the spectator seats and told her to watch closely. She glanced down at her wounds. Surprised they didn't hurt anymore, and they seemed to be healing. Meanwhile, the protagonist thought about his next opponent. Though he had boasted that he could defeat someone with only 100 magic power, he knew there was no way he could win without going all out. Still, he decided to hold himself at 100, using only one attribute and fighting with no incantations. If he took a direct hit, he might die without a barrier. But he found the risk thrilling. His opponent apologized, saying he would not hold back. The protagonist answered that he would be the one to hold back. The crowd of students cheered him on, warning him not to push himself too far. Measuring his opponent's power, he discovered Raju's strength was 8,000 magic power. Normally this wouldn't concern him, but right now, at only 100, even a lapse in focus could mean death. The second match began. Ryuji told him not to hold a grudge. The protagonist thought that with this one attack he could uncover the truth about whether he had really defeated those delinquents. While Ryuji unleashed his full power, the protagonist struck his head and calmly remarked that he was too slow. Everyone was stunned. The match had ended instantly. Ryuji lay unconscious on the ground, The referee announced that the winner of the second match was contestant Kusanagi.
Mage.
Ruka was shocked. He had defeated Ryuji in a single strike without even chanting. She wondered what trick he had used. He told her that he had only ended it quickly, just as she wished. Yua, watching from the sidelines, thought he was amazing. Ruka admitted that he seemed skilled, but he retorted that he was stronger than her. She dismissed his words as more nonsense, but privately noted that her own magic power was 10,000 greater than Ryuji's. Still, he knew she was stronger than Ryuji. The commentator announced that an unexpected event had occurred in the second match and that Kusanagi's unusual fighting style had captured everyone's attention. The third and final match would now determine the victor. When it began, he aimed a magic bullet at Ruka's head, knowing it was the most efficient way to win. With his low magic power, he had to use equally low-level magic craft, but Ruka realized his technique. Instead of dodging, she raised her defenses. She counterattacked, only to be shocked when he remained completely unharmed. It didn't even look like he had used magic. Confused, she wondered what was happening. The students also whispered in disbelief, asking if he had really been hit just now. He wasn't even wet. Yua, too, was astonished. She was certain he had used some hidden technique. Ruka unleashed another round of attacks, but he dodged them all with ease. She realized he was evading everything without using magic at all. Meanwhile, Yua observed carefully and discovered that he was counteracting magic craft with other magic craft even against stronger spells, despite the vast difference in power. She thought he could still annihilate it. She believed it was common knowledge that anyone would get hurt if they didn't defend properly. Her sister reasoned that a level 2 technique meant a difference in speed and precision, so there was no way to escape unscathed. She wondered if he truly had no fear. The protagonist wondered what she might be thinking. He believed it would be possible to avoid the attack, as long as he could sense and detect magic power, though it would still require courage. She attacked him with the third-level Azure Splash, convinced he wouldn't be able to dodge it. The students were shocked to see her using such a high-level technique. They whispered that it would be bad if he was hit directly. She laughed, declaring he wouldn't be able to dodge this. But suddenly, she was struck by his magical bullet, and he appeared before her. Shocked, she exclaimed that there was no way he could be fine after such an attack. She asked how he had managed to dodge it. He calmly explained that he had used a magic drain capable of consuming magical craft, which allowed him to walk straight through the center of her magic. When she looked behind him, she realized the path he walked was completely intact. She laughed at the thought of him walking through her magic and finally accepted her defeat. The commentator announced his victory, noting that no one would have expected such an outcome. Mizuha rushed toward them and asked if they were all right. He told her they were fine and that he had won. She was content with his victory. Her sister, as promised, said she wouldn't interfere anymore and that Mizuha was free to do as she liked. The protagonist sighed in relief. He looked at Yua's wound and said it was very shallow. Then, he asked if she might have been holding back during their fight, since she seemed shocked and unwilling to accept the result. He told her she had gotten much stronger in just 2 weeks and must have realized it herself, so she should stop being so overprotective. Yua replied that she would get stronger so as not to make her sister worry anymore. Her sister agreed, saying they were right. Just then, the protagonist felt a strange energy. He looked at the sky and was stunned as it turned red. He realized it was an abnormal magic power. The Calamity had returned. They all stared at the sky in shock. Meanwhile, in the classroom, Tanawan and his friends were searching through the protagonist's bag. They had to find out the truth after losing so many people in the duel. One friend said Kusanagi only had books in his bag and was far too diligent, but Tanawan insisted he must have something else. Otherwise, how could he use such powerful magic? He glanced out the window and froze in shock. "What the hell is that?" he muttered. Tadano asked if he had found anything but was startled when he too saw the sky turning red. He wondered what was happening. Then his friend whispered that it was a calamity. But they didn't want to believe it. They thought there was no way such a thing could return, since the last calamity had ended 50 years ago. The press began recording the sudden change in the sky's color while students whispered anxiously about what was happening. Some said it seemed like a calamity, but others dismissed it, insisting it was impossible. The protagonist wondered why the calamity was happening again, and if it had anything to do with what happened in Shinjuku. He remembered that the first calamity had also begun in Shinjuku and questioned whether this could really be a coincidence. Soon, beasts started appearing in the school. The students panicked. Their teacher urged them to calm down. The protagonist released his magical bullets, killing the nearby monsters, and then used his magic to reassure everyone. Most of the students, however, were still terrified. Suddenly, an anonymous voice spoke, telling them that only monsters would appear during the opening of the Calamity, so everything would be fine as long as they handled the situation rationally. The voice instructed everyone to evacuate to the gymnasium in groups, since moving alone would be dangerous. When asked what he planned to do, the protagonist said he would go to the school building to rescue the remaining students. His teacher scolded him for being reckless, warning that it was too dangerous to go alone, but Rigi stepped forward, saying he would accompany him. Though hesitant, the teacher agreed after remembering what both of them were capable of. He only told them not to overdo it. On their way, Ryuji asked if there was no chance of dying. The protagonist replied that he had already said the beasts wouldn't be that strong at the beginning of the Calamity. He reassured Yua, telling her to stay safe. She told him to be careful. Rigi insisted he would go first as a senior, boasting that his speed allowed him to run 100 meters in just 10 seconds, but he was shocked when the protagonist moved even faster, leaving in milliseconds. Rigi thought, his speed is monstrous, but speed alone isn't everything. He decided to observe the protagonist's true power closely as they saved people along the way. Kusanagi then used his magic power to scan the academy building. He detected 58 individuals with magic power inside, but he knew there might also be ordinary humans with no magic ability. To confirm, he searched the entire building with his senses. He soon saw a magical beast attacking a student. Without hesitation, he leapt through the window, confronted the beast, and struck it down. He killed them, but then a beast appeared from behind. He quickly attacked and killed it too. Rigi saw this and asked if he was alright. The protagonist continued killing all the monsters, and while leaving, he told Rigi that he would entrust him with a student evacuation. Rigi told him to wait, saying it would be dangerous alone, but he had already left. Rigi thought he was way too fast. He wondered if the protagonist saw him as a burden, but he couldn't deny it. It was probably true. Looking at the dead beast, Rigi was stunned. The protagonist had annihilated them all within seconds. Who is this guy? He thought. The protagonist reflected that outside he could only defeat the monsters with magical bullets. But indoors he risked harming students, so he had no choice but to rely on ceaseless low-grade magic. Room by room he killed the monsters. The students thanked him for saving their lives. Still, he thought it would be a waste of time to personally escort every group to the gymnasium after saving them. On the other side, Ryuji told the students that he would take care of the beasts, so they should evacuate quickly. Suddenly, one of the students pointed to the sky. Confused, he looked up, only to see students falling from the sky, shielded by a magical barrier. He wondered what Kusagi was doing. Knowing his nature, he thought, he seems to genuinely care for others. I hope he'll be alright. Meanwhile, the protagonist sensed another monster attacking a student. The girl was terrified as the beast cornered her near the stairs. Backed up against the wall, shivering and crying, she begged for help. The protagonist fired his magic bullets, killing the monster instantly. The students watching realized it was the same technique used to save her during the physical training class. He appeared before her and asked if she was hurt. Trembling, she asked if he had been the one to save her. He answered yes. Then she asked if he was also the one who had saved her during class. He confirmed it. She thanked him for saving her life twice, but he told her not to think too much about it. It was nothing special. When Ryuji arrived, he asked who the next person needing rescue was. The protagonist told the girl she would be safe if she followed Ryuji. Then he left, as there were still many others who needed saving. He thought to himself that there was no time to wait for the police. He needed to hurry. Meanwhile, a meeting was being held regarding the Calamity. The Prime Minister informed the others that a calamity had occurred at Kamui Magic Academy. Shocked, they asked why it had happened, and if it was truly within their country. There had been no calamity in the past 50 years. They pressed him about what should be done. The Prime Minister explained that they were still contacting both the Beast Countermeasures Division of the Metropolitan Police Department and the Magic Nobles. He added that the Ground Self-Defense Force had begun preparation, but others pointed out that the only mages in the Self-Defense Force specialized in disaster response. None were trained to fight magical beasts. The Prime Minister admitted he was aware of this fact. He thought bitterly that this was the negative effect of living peacefully for too long without catastrophe. Most of the military expenditure had gone to national defense and international affairs. Handling magical beasts had been left to the police and the magic nobles. Slamming his hand on the table in frustration, he said that the disaster from 50 years ago was happening again, but this time, they didn't have Ichikami Minato to save them. Later, two inspectors from the Beast Countermeasures Division of the Metropolitan Police Department headed toward the academy. Sergeant Sanadakin asked her fellow officer if there really was a calamity at the academy. He confirmed it without doubt. She muttered that they had been safe for 50 years, and realized the peace had only been temporary. Still, she thought it was no problem. Inspector Shago reminded her that this was exactly why they were there. Determined, she replied that she would do her best and rushed toward the academy. Meanwhile, reporters in a helicopter broadcast the scene live. They reported that the sky had turned red and beasts were appearing one after another. Some were even appearing inside the school grounds, forcing students to take refuge in the gymnasium. Teachers instructed the students that magical beasts were their only opponents, and if they worked together they could fight back. The reporters continued, saying that both teachers and students were working hard, but so many beasts appeared that they could not leave the academy. The citizens watching the news were terrified, especially since Kamui Magic Academy was nearby. Many worried that the situation would spill over. Then suddenly, a beast appeared behind some civilians. In panic, they ran to save their lives. Watching the worsening situation from the tower, officials realized things were getting out of hand, as magical beasts began surrounding the academy. While fear spread among the public watching the news, Kusanagi Minato continued to fight inside the academy. He realized that the monsters kept pouring in huge numbers, so it was almost time for the Calamity to enter the second stage, when stronger beasts would appear. As the stages progressed, the beasts would continue appearing endlessly unless the boss was defeated. The boss only revealed itself in the final stage, so until then, he had to hold out, though he thought it was bothersome. After saving a few students, he estimated that he had already rescued around 20 while the rest were still scattered everywhere. Saving them all was already hard work, but he moved on to the next one. At the same time, Tadano-kan was attacked by a demon soldier. He tried to fight back but soon realized there was no point. He could no longer launch attacks, so he gave up. His friends wondered why another demon soldier had appeared, but Tadano warned them not to act recklessly. Still, he muttered that Kusagi could defeat it in a single blow, so why couldn't he? The protagonist appeared and told him bluntly that it was because he was weak. Then, in a single strike, he defeated the demon soldier. A hole opened in the wall behind them, and he turned to leave. Tadano grew frustrated. Once again, he had been saved by him. He shouted at him to stop, asking why he kept saving him. Wasn't he annoyed? And if so, why help him? The protagonist calmly replied that there was no particular reason. He saved him simply because he was capable of doing so. Tadano demanded, "Is that all you have to say?" Then, clenching his fists, he shouted not to mess with him. He called himself a wimp who couldn't even use magic properly, then asked how the protagonist had gotten so strong. The protagonist told him that Kusagi Minato had died in a traffic accident and was reborn. Tadano grew furious and asked if people truly became stronger at death's door. He gritted his teeth, thinking he should have been stronger than him, but instead he had to be saved by someone like him. The protagonist looked him in the eye and asked if he truly thought he was stronger. He explained that the strong don't oppress the weak, and the weak don't oppress those weaker than them. Tadano had been blinded by a false sense of superiority, tricking himself into believing he was strong. In truth, he couldn't even imagine standing against someone like him. "Am I right?" the protagonist asked before walking past him. Tadano collapsed to the ground, trembling. He knew he had been running from the truth, that his power hadn't grown since junior high. Instead, he had vented his frustration on those weaker than him. But now he had been saved by Kusagi, the one he had always considered the weakest. He couldn't accept that truth. His friends murmured among themselves about what had just happened. In the end, they had been saved by him. One of them called out to Juchan, who was crying quietly. Meanwhile, the protagonist killed another wave of magical beasts and demon soldiers, burning their remains. He realized the demon soldiers were increasing in number, which meant the boss would likely appear soon. Turning to the terrified students cowering in the corner, he reassured them, "It's all right now. Be at ease." Elsewhere, Ryuji grew frustrated as hordes of monsters attacked him, pushing him to his limits. Gritting his teeth, he struck them down. Then, two magic beasts appeared behind a girl. He quickly shot them dead and told the students he would protect everyone, so they should rest assured and just follow him. Grateful, they obeyed. But looking ahead, Ryuji worried. Although he had promised to protect them, the sheer number of beasts was overwhelming. "What should I do?" he thought, sinking into deep concern. Just then, the protagonist suddenly appeared behind him. saying he would help. Startled, Ryuji snapped at him not to appear out of nowhere like that. The protagonist told him to escape as soon as he defeated the monsters. Ryuji argued it was impossible, given their numbers. The protagonist suggested taking a different route, but then instantly killed the monsters in a single strike, clearing the path. Everyone was stunned. He urged them to hurry, telling them to evacuate quickly. They rushed toward the gymnasium while he cleared more monsters along the way. Ryuji thought to himself that he was truly incredible. Once the others were out of sight, the protagonist decided he should head back and search the school building again. Meanwhile, outside the gymnasium, students and teachers continued fighting against the beasts. The teacher instructed them not to give up and to keep fighting. Yua grew exhausted and nearly collapsed, but her elder sister caught her. She told her to go inside if she couldn't resist anymore, warning that she would only become a burden, but Yua refused to give up. She insisted that they didn't have time to rest and kept fighting. Ryuji arrived with a group of rescued students. His teacher praised him, saying he had done well and told him to take them inside. After leaving them, he came back out to fight. He asked Ruka about the situation, and she replied that they were barely holding the beasts back. Yo, meanwhile, looked around desperately for the protagonist and asked about his whereabouts. Ryuji told her that he was alive and kicking. Relieved, she smiled, saying she was glad. He added that the protagonist was an incredible guy and that if he had been there with them, they might have already overcome the calamity. Yo agreed, saying that if he were there, they would surely have gotten rid of the monsters. Quickly, they heard a strange roar and were shocked. The teacher instructed them to evacuate immediately. They were horrified to see so many demon soldiers. Ryuji shouted that they must escape as there were too many, and they ran away. Looking back, they saw the monsters being killed by the police. Inspector Shido Shallow instructed his colleagues to hurry, eliminate the beasts, and prioritize civilian safety. The students were relieved that the police had arrived. The inspector reassured them, saying it would be fine now that they were there, and that they should evacuate according to their instructions. Mayua insisted that they would fight alongside the police, but he told her that civilians should head to the gymnasium. She replied that they were not civilians. Her elder sister added that they were mages, so the officer agreed and told them to back them up by attacking from the rear. He thought that since they were low in numbers, these mages would be a massive help. Still, part of him felt the police were pathetic. While they fought the beasts, Sergeant Sanada Kurin was healing the students, reassuring them that everything would be all right. The protagonists, seeing the police cars, felt somewhat relieved by their arrival and decided to leave the rest to them. Yet, he was troubled by their irresponsibility. How could the police have arrived before the self-defense troops? Since the calamity was a national-level disaster, the state surely must have had preventive measures prepared. Still, he wondered if this country had grown complacent, taking peace for granted. Resolving to do what he could, he left to save the remaining students, still trapped in the building. Meanwhile, reporters informed the nation that the police had arrived at the scene, but the beasts were growing in number. They questioned whether the police alone would be enough to handle the situation. Citizens anxiously waited for the noble mages to arrive. Students from another school, listening to the news, said that noble mages existed precisely for times like this and waited in anticipation. An elderly husband and wife, watching the broadcast, muttered that since they already paid taxes, the noble mages would surely resolve the problem. The wife agreed, saying it was true. The reporter, too, called for the noble mages to hurry. Meanwhile, at the estate of the mage noble house Fuka, the head Fukajin told his secretary to ignore the news. When asked if he was certain, the director explained that the police were more than enough to handle a small-scale calamity. Therefore, there was no need for the mage nobles to get involved. When asked where he was going, Jin replied that he was going to sleep. His secretary bowed and wished him a good rest. At the same time, in Kamui Magic Academy, the situation worsened for the police. The inspector asked his men if they could handle the beasts near the entrance, but they replied that there were too many. The inspector realized the beasts were appearing faster than expected, making timely evacuation with civilians nearly impossible. He thought that rear support was the self-defense force's duty, but since they hadn't arrived, their only hope was the mage nobles, yet they could not even contact them. Frustrated, he muttered that the mage nobles existed for times like this, yet those useless people still hadn't shown up. The students continued fighting against the beasts, while the inspector recalled information he had studied. This disaster was called a calamity. He wondered if people in the past had faced it in the same way and shuddered at the thought of what would happen if the boss appeared. And suddenly a light shone from the sky and the monsters parted, The boss monster appeared. Everyone was stunned. The inspector broke into a sweat, his body stiff with anxiety. It was impossible. The boss was the demon captain. Haruka recognized it as a beast so rare in this era that only the mage nobles could defeat it. Yua trembled in fear, realizing they needed magic above level 5, but no one there could cast such a spell. The demon captain hurled fire at her. Still confused, Yo froze, but her elder sister rushed in front of her trying to strike the boss. She shielded Yo but was struck by the demon captain's attack instead. She collapsed to the ground, leaving Yo stunned. Her sister weakly told her to run away, but Yo clung to her severely injured body and cried for help. No one heard her. Everyone else was busy holding back the beasts. It was impossible to defeat the demon captain. The police thought they were doomed. Holding her sister, Yua cried desperately, calling for Kusanagi to save them. As the demon captain drew closer, the protagonist appeared. He apologized to her for being late and making her wait. Through tears, Yua begged him to look at her sister's condition. He reassured her, saying she was only unconscious and didn't need to worry. He then glanced at the other students, who were also unconscious, and enchanted a magic spell. As he prepared to leave, Yua called out to him. He told her that he would defeat the boss, and she nodded in agreement. Then, lights appeared from the ground around the injured students, leaving Yua shocked. As her sister's wounds were healing, all the students also recovered and regained consciousness. Sergeant Sanada-kin was surprised to see this magic, and wondered if it was the third-level holy magic, Sacred Heal. She asked who had used such sorcery, as even she could not perform it. She went to her senior and asked if he was all right. He told her that he was fine, but he had simply run out of magic power. He asked her what was happening, but she was not sure. Despite his deteriorated condition, he insisted on protecting the civilians. She told him it was too reckless, and that he might die. He argued that if they didn't fight, everyone would be killed. But she reminded him it was already impossible, as all their police officers had been annihilated. He grew frustrated because neither the mage nobles nor the self-defense troops were showing up, and he realized there was nothing more they could do. The reporter, watching the scene, was shocked at the annihilation of the police and thought it was the end for them. Viewers too despaired, thinking the mage nobles were useless, since they would all be killed. The public grew more worried, as no one seemed capable of defeating the demon captain. Meanwhile, the protagonist approached the demon captain. The police officers were shocked to see him heading there alone and wondered if he wanted to die. They shouted at him to get away. Standing before so many monsters, he declared that the beasts had been doing whatever they pleased for long enough. The demon captain roared, ordering the monsters to kill, and everyone was stunned, wondering what would happen next. An explosion shook the area as the protagonist attacked and told the demon captain to shut up. Enraged, the demon captain roared again and the beasts ganged up against him. The protagonist thought back to when he had gone all out during the world's biggest calamity, but this time he knew he had to hold back to avoid involving the people around him. The monsters attacked, but he blocked them. The officers thought he would be killed, but his defenses held. He then released his magic bullets, striking the monsters down. The officers were shocked, wondering what was happening and who this mysterious student was. A reporter announced that an anonymous student was fighting the beasts, though his face was hidden. She told the cameraman to zoom in, but as he tried, his camera was suddenly attacked and destroyed. Yor realized that Kusanagi might be hiding his true strength on purpose, and now that the camera was broken, he could finally fight without distractions. As the protagonist continued killing the beasts, the students thought he was incredible. Hope filled them, and they began cheering for him. When they were surrounded again by monsters, he swiftly killed them all with his bullets. One officer said that although their companions had died, they could still contribute by supporting him. Seeing this, the protagonist thought that the police of this era weren't half bad after all. He continued killing most of the beasts until the demon captain roared and unleashed a terrifying spell. The officers were stunned. It was 6th level magic, a level on par with the mage nobles. Now they knew they had no chance of winning. Flames spread everywhere and panic filled the students. The officers tried to shield them while Sergeant Sanada covered a student and prayed to God for protection. The inspector watching thought it was impossible for a mere student to defeat the demon captain. No matter how strong he seemed, there was no way he could win. But Yua believed in his strength. She thought that if anyone could do it, he could. The protagonist examined the massive flames created by the demon captain's 6th level spell. Though powerful, the flames were slow. which meant the demon captain was forcing himself to use such advanced magic. The protagonist realized that continuing with only second-level magic would not be enough. Though he did not want to stand out, he had no choice. He invoked a tremendous water attribute spell, creating a colossal serpent of water. Yua was relieved. She knew this spell. The officers were astonished, wondering what kind of synthesis magic could form such a massive water serpent. The serpent devoured the flames and surged toward the demon captain. The boss roared, shouting to kill and slaughter the humans, and sent forth his fire monster. But the protagonist's serpent consumed the flames and pushed forward. The demon captain, bewildered, wondered why this was happening. Before he could react, the water serpent struck him directly, ending his life. The protagonist remarked coldly that the demon captain had been defeated because he was weak and lacked training. He thought the boss should have been stronger, but in the end, he was far weaker than expected. As the demon captain fell, the sky cleared. The protagonist knew the calamity had passed, as defeating the boss meant the end of the threat. The students looked up, wondering if they were truly safe now. Realizing that Kusanagi had defeated the demon captain, they cheered in joy. The reporter and cameraman cried tears of relief, overjoyed that they had survived. The sergeant reassured the students that it was safe now. The calamity had ended. Inspector Shadow, however, was left in shock. That student couldn't possibly have defeated the demon captain. Even mage nobles might not have been able to. He slumped to the ground, shaken, and wondered just who this mysterious boy really was. His knees had given out. The protagonist went to Yua and her sister and told them that he had ended it. Yua said she believed in him and thanked him. Then he was stunned as many students gathered around him, thanking him for saving them and saying he was incredible. He told them he understood and requested them to step back, but they were unwilling to leave him. He thought that, once again, he had ended up standing out, just like in his past. Worried about the future, he noticed her smirking at him as if amused by his annoyance. The news regarding the calamity at Kamui Magic Academy was announced. It stated that the calamity had been safely stopped, but the academy declared they would not disclose information about the student who defeated the boss. There were no casualties, though several people sustained mild injuries. The students were watching the news and said they were talking about him. They thought it was natural since he was their savior. Some asked if he would get promoted to S-class. One female student worried it would be a hindrance for them as they wouldn't be able to talk to him casually anymore while he was simply pissed off. One student touched his shoulder and asked how he was so strong and whether he had inherited the blood of mage nobility. Another student behind him sneered, saying he was growing conceited from being pampered, since no student was as strong as him. The others got angry and defended him, saying it was true that he defeated the demon captain. A girl also testified to it and told them to stop teasing him. Out of frustration, one insisted it was still weird no matter how they thought about it. Taking advantage of their quarrel, the protagonist escaped the classroom and was relieved at his success. Yua asked if he was having a hard time, but he told her not to tease him. She replied that he was the hero who protected everyone, so there was no helping it. He asked if she also got promoted to the S-class, and she said it seemed to be the result of the battle and the calamity. He asked why she didn't seem happy, and she said she was happy because she knew someone she trusted was there too. While talking, he remembered her sister. Yua reassured him that she was fine, and mentioned they talked more often than before, which made him glad for her. She was pleased too and thanked him, saying it was all because of him, and that she was glad he was there. He lightly hit her head, and she asked what that was for. He told her that thanking him once was enough. She didn't need to keep saying it. Meanwhile, at the Prime Minister's office, the Prime Minister ended a call saying that each country had concluded the teleconference. One of his aides said that finding support for the next calamity would be hard, as every nation already had too much on its plate just preparing countermeasures. He asked if the media reports were true that a student defeated the boss. They told him the scene had been chaotic, and most of the police were knocked out, so it might be a misunderstanding. The Prime Minister said that each country's leaders were skeptical too, which was understandable. He then instructed them to bring back the mage nobles, as they needed to set up a conference to prepare for the next calamity. Later on the school rooftop, Ruka and Ryuji stood in front of the protagonist and Yua. Ruka asked the protagonist if she could request something from him. She wanted him to accept her as his disciple. Both sisters were sitting together, and Ruka asked her younger sister if it was true that Kusanagi had stopped the calamity. Yua confirmed it, saying he had defeated the demon captain boss using 4th level synthesis magic. Ruka was shocked, Fourth level synthesis magic was something even the highest class mages could not use. Yua assured her it was true, and Ruka believed her, saying there was no way her sister would lie. Yua asked why she believed her so easily. Ruka said it was because Yua had always been an upright child since the beginning. Obedient, gentle, serious, hardworking, and someone who would never lie. She admitted that someone with those qualities shouldn't have been called a talentless mage, but realized she had been too forceful on her. Manhwa, Yua, looked at her sister and said that she would grow strong enough to put her elder sister at ease, so she should rest assured. Ruka smiled and told her that she had grown up. Ruka thought that Kusanagi Minato's strength surpassed that of an ordinary student, and perhaps even exceeded her father's. So, she called her sister and asked if she could help her with something. Ruka explained that if things continued as they were, she would at most end up as a high-class mage. She needed the protagonist's help to become even stronger. She apologized to him for looking down on him and insulting him before, admitting that she knew how selfish this request was. Still, she said she would swallow her pride and ask. Before she could even finish, he agreed. She was stunned and asked what he meant. He calmly said he would make her his disciple. Shocked, she asked why he agreed to help her. He said she was the weirdo here, since she was the one who had asked for it. She admitted that was true, but still reminded him that she had done so many awful things to him. He simply replied that he forgave her, because she apologized. He accepted her apology because she asked him to. That was all the reason behind it. And she was stunned. Reggie asked if he could teach 2 more students, and he agreed. As there was no issue with teaching 1 or 2 more people, she told her sister that he was the kind of person Reggie had thought was mysterious. The protagonist told Reggie to let him go, but he asked if holding him like that would be okay. Later, they were in the conference room with his teacher. Police officers from the Beast Countermeasures Division of the Metropolitan Police Department showed their badges and introduced themselves. They bowed in front of him to show their gratitude, thanking him, saying that without his help, both the civilians and they themselves would have been annihilated. He said they had thanked him repeatedly during the questioning, so he thought that was more than enough and asked if they needed anything else. They replied that the investigation regarding the Calamity was complete, but something had piqued their interest. They asked if he had awakened his mage abilities after getting involved in a traffic accident. The people around him confirmed that it was true, and there was no misunderstanding. One officer added that he seemed to have become a whole different person after the accident. His personality had changed, and his magic had become abnormally strong enough to defeat a demon captain. Yua got furious and asked what he was trying to imply. The officer said he would rephrase the question, asking if he knew the Black Magician. The protagonist was shocked and asked about the Black Magician. The officer showed him a video explaining that he was a mage who had defeated beasts and helped people under the cover of night. The video had gone viral online. He asked if they hadn't seen it. Sergeant Sanada Kirin was stunned, realizing this was the same person. Yua asked what it had to do with him. The officer explained that they were similar in status and age, and this Black Magician was considered an extraordinary mage. There were very few people in that age range who could use that much magic. The period when the Black Magician began his activities coincided with the day he was discharged. The officer continued, explaining that it was illegal to use magic in the city without a permit or qualification. If you were a student of the academy, the school could handle it to some extent, but since it had attracted so much publicity, the police had no choice but to take action. Expulsion would not be enough, but if he confessed, they would do their best to reduce the punishment. He should answer with care. They asked if he was the Black Magician. He said he was not, and the officer smiled, saying, "Good, you're not him." While leaving, the protagonist thanked them for visiting. The officer thought that he didn't even fluster easily, and that was a lot of courage. If he were the Black Magician, he would be nothing like a regular high schooler. He suspected there might be something different about him. Sergeant Sanada was sure he was the Black Magician, as the ambience and his voice were similar. She wondered if his nighttime activities were purely to save people. She realized she couldn't reveal his true identity to her senior, counting it as a failure as a police officer, but she also knew he was a kind person who saved her. She resolved to hide his identity to protect him. Later, in the classroom, the teacher introduced the new officers to the class and said they would join the second-year USS class from that day. He told the students to get along well with them. Students came to him and asked if he had defeated the demon captain. A female student went to Yua and asked how it felt to be from mage nobility. The teacher told the students to sit as class began. After class ended, he was barraged with questions during recess. This was exactly why he didn't want to stand out. Someone called him, and he looked back.